Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're going to crack open a really fundamental economic idea. We're going to use a classic text to unpack the surprising, hidden relationship between profit, wages, and a growing economy. And honestly, it's a connection that might just change the way you see things. All right, let's start with a puzzle, one that's kind of stumped people for centuries. Why is it that when an economy is doing great, when it's getting richer and business is booming, you so often hear merchants and business owners complaining that their profits are getting squeezed? It feels totally backward, right? You'd think more wealth would mean more profit for everybody. But here's the twist, this inverse relationship where a growing economy actually leads to a falling average rate of profit. Well, that's actually a sign of a healthy, competitive society. So what's really going on here? What's the mechanism behind this paradox? I mean, how is it even possible that more business activity could lead to lower profit rates for the people involved? Well, it all comes down to one word: competition. See, when a country gets wealthier, that means there's more capital, right? More money floating around for investment. And when a whole bunch of rich merchants all pour that money into the same business, they suddenly have to compete with each other for customers. And what does that do? It naturally drives down the prices they can charge, and boom, down go their profits. Okay, but how do you even prove this? Trying to calculate the exact average profit across an entire economy is, well, it's basically impossible. There are just way too many variables, and everything is changing all the time. The source material really puts it perfectly. It says, profit is affected by every little change in price, the good or bad luck of your rivals, the fortunes of your customers, and 1,000 other random accidents. It doesn't just change from year to year, it can change from hour to hour. It's just too noisy. But, lucky for us, there's a much more stable, much more reliable number we can look at to get a clear picture, and that's the interest rate. It's simply the price people are willing to pay to borrow money. And this quote just nails the core idea. Think about it. If businesses are making huge profits, they can afford to pay high interest to borrow the money they need to expand. But if profits are low, they can only afford to pay low interest. So the interest rate becomes this fantastic clue, a proxy for the average profit rate in the whole economy. All right, so we've got a theory and we've got a tool, the interest rate, to measure it. But does this actually hold up in the real world? Well, we can use interest rates as our guide and look back through history to see the proof in the pudding. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this tracks the economic rise of England. Over about 200 years, as the country got way, way richer, the government kept lowering the legal interest rate. But here's the key. They weren't trying to cause lower interest. They were just following the market, which was already trending down on its own. And this pattern isn't just about one country over time. If you look at different places during the same period, the relationship is just as clear. Holland, which was the richest country in the world back then, had the absolute lowest profits and interest rates. England was right behind. And places that were still developing, like Scotland, had higher rates. It all fits. The North American colonies, though, are this really interesting exception that actually proves the rule. Because they had just tons of fertile land, but not enough people or investment capital to work it all, there was just massive opportunity. This unique setup created a huge demand for both workers and for investment, which allowed both wages and profits to be really high at the same time. Okay, so we've established this inverse relationship, right? As an economy gets richer, wages tend to go up and profits tend to go down. But let's ask the next question. How do each of these things, wages and profits, affect the final price you end up paying for stuff? Back in the day, if you listen to the merchants and manufacturers, they'd all tell you the same thing. It's the high wages. They're driving up our prices and making us uncompetitive. But is that what's really going on? Let's actually break down the math. A wage increase affects the final price in a super straightforward way. It's basically like simple interest. If every worker who helps make a piece of linen gets a small raise, the final price just goes up by the simple sum of all those raises. It's a direct additive cost. Simple. But a profit increase? Oh, that's a whole different animal. It works like compound interest. The first guy in the chain adds his profit margin. Then the next guy adds his profit margin on top of the original cost and the first guy's profit. This effect just snowballs and compounds at every single stage of production, making the final price grow exponentially. And this just reveals this incredible bias, doesn't it? The merchants are all out there publicly blaming rising wages for higher prices, because that's simple and easy for people to understand. but they are completely silent about the much bigger compounding effect of their own profits, which actually jacks up prices way more dramatically. Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We've seen how competition lowers profits and how profits affect prices. So what does this all mean for the big picture? Well, it turns out this entire system is actually a powerful engine for how a healthy economy is supposed to work and grow. So it all comes down to this self-reinforcing cycle. The accumulation of capital is the engine that gets everything started. It creates intense competition among the wealthy, and this competition has two huge effects. They have to bid against each other for the best workers, which drives wages up, and they have to undercut each other to win customers, which drives profits down. And here is the final, absolutely brilliant insight. A rich country with low average profit rates can actually grow its total wealth much faster than a poor country with high profit rates. A small percentage of a huge pile of money creates more new wealth than a big percentage of a tiny pile of money. Just like the proverb says, money makes money. So what are we left with? Well, this isn't just some dusty old idea from the 18th century. It gives us a powerful new lens to make sense of the modern economy. So, the next time you hear on the news that corporate profits are falling, instead of assuming it's a sign of doom and gloom, you might just stop and ask yourself, is this actually the sound of a prosperous, competitive economy at work?